Preface. When it came time for a new edition of Aspects of Hegel's Philosophy, I wanted to supplement that text with the monograph on the experiential content of Hegel's philosophy that I had published in the meantime. What impelled me to go beyond this was the analogy with the saying, Tres homines faciunt collegium. 3 monographs make a book, even if it is a short one. Hence, in accordance with a long-cherished plan, I set down my thoughts on questions of understanding Hegel. They spring from my work in the Philosophisches Seminar at the University of Frankfurt. Over many years, Max Horkheimer and I have often been concerned with Hegel there. My intention was to use what I had observed in the teaching situation as a point of departure. Given the unity of the philosophical thought of the two of us responsible for the relevant interpretations, it was possible to forego individual references. To avert disappointment, let me emphasize that Skotainos does not claim to accomplish of itself the illumination of Hegel's main works, something that is long overdue. It merely formulates considerations of principle bearing on this task. At best, it hazards guesses about how one would arrive at an understanding, without dispensing anyone from the efforts involved in concretizing those considerations with regard to the texts. The issue is not to make the reading of Hegel easier, but to prevent the extraordinary exertions that Hegel requires now as then from being wasted. Something that Hegel reminds epistemology about should be applied to instructions about how to read Hegel as well. The instructions can prove successful only in the course of carrying out individual interpretations. The limits that the author of a propedeutic must set for himself would thereby be transgressed. The fact that I have stopped precisely where I ought to begin may excuse some of the obvious inadequacies that displease me. The work as a whole is intended as preparation for a revised conception of the dialectic. Theodor W. Adorno, Frankfurt, summer 1963, a note on the text. Aspects of Hegel's philosophy grew out of a talk I gave at the Free University of Berlin on November 14, 1956, commemorating the 125th anniversary of Hegel's death. The preliminary work was too extensive to be adequately incorporated into that talk. I was forced to select one complex, albeit a central one, for the Berlin talk and to deal with other motifs in a lecture broadcast on Hessian radio. But since the elements had been conceived as a whole, I then brought them together, with important additions, in a monograph. Similarly, the experiential content of Hegel's philosophy is a greatly expanded version of a lecture I gave at the meetings of the German Hegel Society in Frankfurt on October 25, 1958. I delivered it again shortly afterwards in French at the Sorbonne. It was printed in the Archive für Philosophie, 1959, Volume 9, 1-2. Skotainos, written in the winter of 1962-63, is unpublished. Since the 3 complementary parts of the book had been given fixed literary form somewhat independently of one another, certain motifs are repeated, always, of course, from different perspectives. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the assistants at the Philosophisches Seminar at the University of Frankfurt, especially Professor Hermann Schweppenhauser, Dr. Alfred Schmidt, Dr. Werner Becker, and Dr. Herbert Schnadelbach. Theodor W. Adorno editorial remarks from the German edition. The notes Adorno himself provided on the genesis of Hegel, 3 studies, require few additions. The first of the 3 studies was published separately by Suhrkamp Verlag, Berlin and Frankfurt am Main, in 1957 under the title Aspects of Hegel's Philosophy. That edition contains a motto taken from Adorno's Minima Moralia, Das Ganze ist das Unwahre, the whole is the untrue. A note to that edition dated January 1957 was incorporated into the note in Hegel 3 Studies, with the exception of the last paragraph, which reads, "A publication about Hegel offers an opportunity to repeat that the philosophical thought of the author and that of Max Horkheimer are one and the same. For this reason, it has been possible to forego individual references." The 3 studies were put together as Drei Studien zu Hegel for the series Edition Suhrkamp, and the first edition was published in 1963. The text of Hegel, 3 Studies, is based on the 3rd edition of 1969, the last to appear during the author's lifetime. A few corrections have been made on the basis of indications in the author's copy. The citations have been checked and corrections made where necessary. 4 textual notes in Scotinos have been moved from the endnotes to the pages to which they refer. Otherwise, the form of the notes follows that of the original as far as possible. Even the points in which they are inconsistent are an expression of Adorno's antipathy to unified systematic thought. January 1971.